knowledge management, topic of today, very important, very elusive also. What is that, knowledge management? Well, it gets pretty practical, I suppose, as soon as it gets to applications. No more talk of me. Let's just first have our expert panel introduce themselves and give an example of best and worst practice, best and worst practice in knowledge management, whatever strikes your fancy. And I start with, how could I not start with Universiteit Twente, with Jawar Abbas.
Thank you, Henk. My name is Jawar Abbas. I am a PhD candidate at University of Twente, and I have been working for the past 2.5 years on the topic of knowledge management. And of course, when I got the invite, I was very enthusiastic to share my ideas with the colleagues here and also learn from you, experienced colleagues. And of course, when we look at knowledge management, it has evolved, let's say, in the past few decades, from trying to get the information to the decision makers, to making sure that we have the right culture in place. And now we are sitting in an environment where everybody is behind a screen. And what does the knowledge management mean now? So the subject is changing, and of course, like you said, when we talk about application, then the value of knowledge management becomes really important. And I'm looking forward to the discussion today and sharing my ideas on what are, let's say, some of the good practices and worst practices of knowledge management.
Jawar, could you share one example of where you think, well, this is really in the context of maintenance, this is really an example, this is how it should be done, or perhaps, well, this was so bad, this was the reason why I got into this subject in the first place, something like that.
Yeah, that's a good question, Hank. I can share, fortunately, an example that I have been busy with in my master thesis. There, the problem was that, let's say, there was a trust deficit between the people who were maintaining the train. So I was working together with NS and people who were the suppliers of the train. So what was happening is that the maintainers were doing the maintenance based on the instructions of the supplier and according to their guidelines. But at the same time, because it was a new train, we were still seeing a lot of problems, maintenance events coming up. So when they used to go for warranty claims, they got the response, okay, you are just not doing the maintenance right. So now we had the situation here where the maintainer is trying to do their best to do the maintenance according to instruction, but still the part is failing. And the supplier is thinking, okay, you are just not doing the maintenance right. And so we have a trust deficit. And from the knowledge management point of view, when we looked deeper into the problem, we saw that the IT-based system that they were using at that moment, there was no way to validate the claims. And go back and look in the history and see, okay, did it really happen the way it was supposed to be? Was the maintenance done in a proper way? So what we did is we developed a blockchain-based application to build trust, and to have approvals of maintenance events in different time intervals. And of course, because blockchain is immutable, so you can build trust on it. You can look back and see, okay, we actually did the maintenance in a proper way, and still the part is failing. So there was more trust built into the system, and then people could work together and work towards designing the system in a better way. So that is one example that comes in my mind.
That's a cool example. Yeah. Then no trust for bitcoins, but trust for trustworthiness of the actual maintenance being done. Great, yeah. Nice example. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Koen, you're next. And we go to a different part of the country and a different industry, but still, knowledge management.
Yes, we're going to a very interesting part of the Netherlands. It's called Brabant.
Yeah, wonderful part of the Netherlands. How can I disagree?
So my name is Koen de Graaf. I'm a consultant at the Province of Noord-Brabant on international innovation projects. That means that in my role, I connect all kinds of innovation activities in Europe to the stakeholders here in Brabant. And for that reason, I'm also involved with the world-class maintenance to connect them to international developments. So what I would like to bring to the table, next to the fact that in a former life I've also been responsible for the human capital agenda of the top sector of high-tech systems. Nowadays, I'm very much involved in the digital transformation, and not only the digital transformation, but also the energy transformation of the industries in the south of the Netherlands. And in this respect, I would like to make my example, Henk, to put it into this perspective. So what we see at the moment is a lot of change, not only due to the COVID situation, but also in the transformation of our industries. And that is across the sectors. So it's not only on maintenance, it is everywhere. And this puts an enormous pressure on people in different ways. We not always know exactly how to deal with these new technologies. We don't know exactly how to deal with digitization in all respects. So that counts for, let's say, multiple generations, maybe less for the younger generations. But on the other end, the younger generations might face a lot of or lack of experience. And now we face the challenge of these two-dimensional, three-dimensional aspects to combine them. And in my view, and I would like to pose that as a statement, we should more and more look to technology tools to help us with that, like AR and VR, for example, like the application of all kinds of artificial intelligence tools. And we have to integrate them on the shop floor, bring them to the people. And that brings us to the next aspect of social innovations. We might have to change our management styles, how we work in groups, the autonomy of workers. So a lot of challenges, and I'm very happy to be at this round table to discuss with other experts on the specific fields about their ideas, how to approach that. It's not only a challenge, but I think it is also a huge opportunities which can give us, but more the companies, a competitive advantage in the markets, and that's exactly what we are aiming for.
Thank you, Koen. I was just thinking, and sorry that that's against the procedure, but hey, whatever. That it's actually a very old idea to use technology to boost knowledge management. Because what else is the invention of the book press? You know, so in the 16th century.
That's really old.
That's really, yeah, but isn't it? I mean, as a result of that, not just Bibles, etc., but all sorts of scientific work and geographical atlases. Before that time was all handwritten. So if you wanted to spread knowledge in the 16th century, in the 17th century, then book printing was the AR, VR of that era, if you like. So it's sounds like, yeah, why are you using technology to solve a human problem? Well, we've been doing this for 500 years now. So from the clay tablets onwards almost. So it's actually a very solid and well-grounded idea to look for technology to address issues of knowledge management. Sorry for just the perhaps it's the time of the year. I don't know. Anyway. Okay, thank you, Koen. And now where's my list of... yeah, on the list is then Frans van den Akker. Frans, also a very knowledgeable person on the topic of knowledge management. Tell us more about yourself and your examples.
Yes, so good afternoon. So my name is Frans van Akker and I'm working in the top sector energy. Involved there with one of the questions there we have is that we have a lot of innovation projects, and how to get the results of all this nice scientific and applied research towards the people that are really out there in the field wanting to use that knowledge, and also teachers that will have to teach the young new generations. And to come back on the remarks made before by you, to give an example, before we had the written history, we had oral history. So narratives, and we nowadays call it storytelling, but it's in a way it's going back a long time ago. Spreading stories, examples is one approach for the knowledge management. And to give an example of what went not that well, or what still has to be improved, is that at one moment in time, and maybe you all recognize that moment, that at a moment in time, someone in a team says, we have built this large Wikipedia in which we store all the explicit knowledge about smart maintenance or augmented reality. And that in itself is always a good idea. And then the next question is, how can we find what we really need in this large library? And so also with old libraries, the problems already existed that we need this librarian and a catalog, and we need categorization of the knowledge. So one is collecting the knowledge, the other is providing it in such a way that you really can have access to it. And then using the remark of Koen, that, for instance, text mining, using artificial intelligence, could help us giving this large body of knowledge that we have in our libraries and in the expert heads towards people. But we tried this and we failed in making this large catalog. We were not able at that moment to give all these nice categories and to make this ontology which we need to get access to all the knowledge. I will wait for the good example, otherwise I'll be talking too long. This is just an introduction.
Okay, good. Thank you, Frans. And Mark. Mark here.
Yeah, my name is Mark Gerars. I work in the capital intensive industry for 30 years. I've worked most of the time at the site of the service providers. So I have seen a lot of problems service providers have and how they connect with the knowledge, the experience of the clients. For me, knowledge management is a critical item, because if you want to drive a serious company, you want to have the opportunity to improve, you want to have also the opportunity to do the things right the first time, then you need the experience and the knowledge captured in a system. So it starts with capture, then you have to share, and how to find it and how to share it. But the one very important one is that when you have shared the knowledge, you also improve it. When you don't improve the knowledge and the items you share, people will not use it again. They say, "Oh, I've seen it. It can be done smarter. I don't need your knowledge base. I don't need all the knowledge of my colleagues." That's one of the threats I've seen. One of the good things I've seen in the past with clients, but also in the companies I worked for, is that there were communities of practice, and then you had a knowledge owner. He was the owner, and when you make a good structure in your knowledge management system, you can look for example, for reliability or for data analytics, and then you go to that person, and he can also be the broker, the librarian, between the available knowledge and the people using it. And you get a process. And the biggest threat was that knowledge is in systems is up to date. And then I will take my own laptop again. I don't want to call, I don't look at VCM or at my colleagues. No, I do it myself again. I have done it before. And another one, what I saw when we worked in the several regions around the world, the problem of, and that was what also was said before, that's a cultural thing, not invented here. I don't accept your knowledge. I don't recognize you as the expert. That's just my experience.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. Roland, you are of course a facilitator, as I am, but you do work several projects. As why we thought about this beforehand. in the area of knowledge transfer and knowledge management in the field of maintenance. From that experience, what is it that you can share with us in terms of best of work practice?
I think you're referring to me being a project leader for a Skills Lab project of world-class maintenance.
For instance.
And for instance, and if we talk about knowledge management over there, then it is about capturing sort of the knowledge from the innovative pilots, innovative organizations, the places where the innovation really happens, and making sure that more people get those skills. So if you look at the Field Lab program as a whole in the Netherlands, they say that, all right, quite some organizations are involved in this, but if we really want to make a transition to smart maintenance in the Netherlands, then we also need to get those skills from those people who were involved to all the organizations who are not yet involved. And one way to do that is via education. So what we try to do in the Skills Lab project is that we try to get students and the teachers involved in those pilots and make sure that they, via multiple ways, but are aware and are knowledgeable about the latest innovations and can also teach those skills to the next generation, to the current students, which will then graduate, become workforce, and then want to implement these innovations further. Yeah. So it's via education. That's one way of doing this, and making sure that a larger scale has access to these innovations.
Koen, would you like to add to that?
Yes, I have a question for Roland, because of course this is very important, but my question to you is, how do you involve the majority of the workers, the people who are already working as a professional for multiple years? Because they are the majority of the labor market, and they are one of, well, I don't like to call it bottlenecks, but at least you have to pass them to really implement innovation. They are in the leading positions.
Yeah, so this is, you could call it a lifelong learning in English, I think, where it's the established workforce, the people currently in the organizations. So within the Skills Lab project, we're not just developing courses for new students, but those courses should also be providable to the workforce, either via Avans Plus, or for example at Kuehne + Nagel, they are working on a technical academy to train the people internally, and the modules provided in such a technical academy are then again designed together with those teachers. So there you involve that knowledge as well. But you also need, let's say, general courses via education providers for professionals. It's not just the student workers. Frans?
Yes, so it's nice what's happening now in the discussion, that we started with knowledge, and now we have the discussion about education, and so how you actually learn as a professional.
Yeah.
And I think interesting indeed in the Skills Lab and also in other labs in the Netherlands, that we're working together on this hybrid learning environments in which you have both working as industries and education together. And it will be interesting still to see how successful it is in the end, and whether this is a way to organize it. At least it's an experiment going on, a quite serious experiment going on. So I'm also curious about your experiences with that, and whether you think indeed this is a way to go, or does it help knowledge management?
I certainly think that is. Well, what my experience was in the Skills Lab that I saw, one of the good things that happened, also older people, 50 years and older, were asked to do certain tasks with certain tools. And then they could show what they knew, and they were helped at the same time, so they had respect. Those guys went back to the normal day-to-day job, and they called their colleagues because they were in the Skills Lab program, and they asked for, okay, do you have that for me? Can I put in my knowledge? That's also starting up, and then you need a good system also.
Gerard?
Yep, I think, yeah, we are going in a really good directions. I think a few remarks that I would like to pick up on the point on improvement made by Mark earlier. And what I can say is what we can distill from this discussion is that, of course, knowledge management has a technical side and a non-technical side. And like you rightly pointed out, Henk, that, for example, the technology, looking at technology for knowledge management has been quite an old or robust idea. I think the other thing we need to also point here is the fact that not all the knowledge is explicit. There is also implicit or tacit knowledge. And of course, it is an ongoing challenge. How do we manage that? And how can we use technology to, for example, manage that? For example, in training practical knowledge, for instance. And through my reflection on this subject so far, what I have been able to distill are few features that we can build or that we can invest in to improve knowledge management. And I will take the opportunity to introduce them. So they are coming from a LEAF approach, which the acronym LEAF stands for learnability. So if we have a knowledge, we clarify what other people can learn from it. What is the learnability from this knowledge? Make it easier for different roles. The second is on the embraceability. So how do we make it more accepting to people? That was also a point coming into, okay, how do you make sure that all the people accept it and use it? And the third is applicability, like rightly pointed out by Franz, on how to make it more structured and in different contexts, because like he said, it didn't work. That's partly because knowledge is contextual and it changes. Whatever category you make will not be the same applied in different contexts. So we have to look into different contexts and make sure that the applicability is clear there. And lastly is the findability. And findability, like pointed out, okay, if there are so many documents, how do we easily find what we are looking for? And of course, just-in-time knowledge management, or let's say Google-based looking for knowledge is one idea. But at the same time, when we are thinking from tacit knowledge perspective, we need to be able to find the experts who have the knowledge so that you can have a nice coffee together and, you know, discuss different ideas and pick up different points. So I think that the LEAF approach, these four aspects, can help us to improve the knowledge management strategies, both from technical side and non-technical side.
Right.
Koen.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point of view, and I fully agree with you. And I would like to add another dimension, and that is people. It's all about people, and I think the build of strong networks between people is crucial to apply successfully your LEAF model, because you take the knowledge from those people you trust, and before you trust them, you have to know them. And I think that is a major step in this development, and we should, more than we do today, support the build of these communities, these networks.
Learning is a social process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
And on the tacit side, yeah.
And I totally agree with Koen on this point. I think the embraceability is not just the embraceability of a person with technology, but also at individual level where people trust each other, where like it's a social activity. So definitely that dimension cannot be ignored for tacit knowledge in particular.
There were two things that I went through my head as you were giving all these very smart observations, gentlemen. The one is, sorry for my bias with COVID, but there was the question, okay, we train some people, but how do we get the average worker there? Well, why not through infection? Because I remember nowadays I don't ask it anymore, but some when I started teaching my course in system dynamics at the Tilburg University, there was a simulation tool, and how do you use that tool? And then I said, well, you just figure it out, you know, that's how you do it. And I asked the question to my students, a big hall, over 100 students. Okay, who knows how Bluetooth works? Everybody knows. I'd probably ask who doesn't know how Bluetooth works. That's better, because then you get not to, okay, everybody knows it. Okay, who has looked up how Bluetooth works in a manual? No, hardly anyone. And ask, okay, so you know how Bluetooth worked, and how and you didn't look it up, and how did you do it? Well, I tried, or I looked up how somebody else did it. So in fact, and the same is true for many of our digital skills and many of the awareness that we have, because there is this R greater than 1. If somebody figures it out and it's relevant and uses it, then others will pick it up. Be it I don't know, looking up something on your smartphone, or there is no formal training in using augmented reality for Pokemon Go, and yet lots of people use it, and it's really the same technology that you would use to look at the machine and see what components it comprises of, and how you should actually maintain the equipment. So that's one side to it. I think that's relevant. And the other thing that was said is, yeah, but there's doing and there's learning. Yeah, but isn't lots of our knowledge generated through doing? So if we know how something works, it's because we also in decision making. If you look at how doctors operating on a patient, they often don't know beforehand. Yeah, of course they know the general textbooks, etc., and the rules. But what's actually wrong with this patient, they also have to figure out by trying out stuff. And if you fix something in the home, it's the same thing. You try to fiddle out and open it up and look at what happens. So I think much of our learning, much more than we actually care often admit, is not from books, but is actually from trying it out. And so the mix of field labs where we actually try out stuff and we learn may be much more natural than one, here's the classroom, here's the machine, and never the two shall meet. That's so perhaps we could just going back to the normal state of affairs in that sense.